when the West face inflation, we face it like 3 times worse, right? So currently according to the records, which might not be true, we have an inflation rate of 9.2%. And these are just things that are written online. But Bitcoin offers a platform or a chance where people can actually accept or receive donations from outside, be it from the West or different countries. We have challenges that require immediate action, and Bitcoin is like a saving tool for us. It's hope for us. Okay, so let me just introduce myself to the people who don't know me. I am Lorraine Marcel Atieno. I am from Kenya, born and raised in Kenya. So Bitcoin Dada, I'm the founder of Bitcoin Dada. Bitcoin Dada is a women-centric entity that focuses or promotes financial inclusion and empowerment to the African woman through education and Bitcoin adoption. So our organization identifies the unique challenges that we as African women faces when it comes to financial inclusion or having control over your own money, right? So that said, our major focus is on education, and we are trying to educate as many African women as possible.
What are your primary methods of educating? Because I have no idea. Do women there have access to the internet? I know we've had some internet troubles already ourselves, but do they primarily learn through internet, word of mouth, books? How does the education look there?
So currently what we are doing, we're using online courses. So normally we have classes every Thursdays and Tuesdays at night, 9 p.m., which is online. And then we also have Bitcoin meetups for the classes that really need physical attention, like opening of the wallets, sending and receiving. Some of these things you can't really teach somebody online. Well, you can, but it's better off when they see it physically, right? We also have Twitter spaces that enables them to interact with the larger Bitcoin community so that they don't see like it's only Marcel who is in this Bitcoin space, but we have also other people who are even more knowledgeable than I am. They can interact with them, they can have experience with them, they can hear the experiences and at least open their minds to, okay, so this thing is not only in Kenya, because some of them when they come to the classes, they feel like since it's somebody from Kenya teaching them, it might be just an organization in Kenya. So when they see even other people from different countries, be it in Africa or the West, it gives them like the urge to continue with these classes. So the online classes, the Bitcoin meetups, and the Twitter spaces. We also currently introduced them to the Bitcoin diploma book. I was introduced to it by Rice Sterling of IBEX. So we also use that as reference. I have my own course outline that I designed specifically for the African woman, but we also use the Bitcoin diploma for references on certain things.
Yeah, that's interesting. A variety there. A lot of because here in the States, it's pretty much all online. Sometimes people get paperback books, but it sounds like it's much more of a versus here in the States or Europe, it's much more people go to the internet and then they meet up online. It sounds like in Kenya, people predominantly meet up in the communities because perhaps the communities are smaller or it spreads word of mouth there better. So how many would you say are in, with Bitcoin Data and with what you're doing and your other people that are helping educate? How many people would you say are in this network of people that are? And has that changed over the last 18 months or so? Because here in the States, the number of people interested has greatly declined over the last year or so as the price goes down. But how has it looked for you? Have you seen an increase in growth or decrease, or like how many people are we looking at?
Okay, I can say there has been an increase, especially with whatever that's happening in Africa and in Kenya. We have the inflation, devaluation of our currency. So a lot of people, and especially the youth, and I'll speak about in Kenya because I'm in Kenya. So the youth are looking towards digital currencies, not only Bitcoin, but digital currencies. And if you go online, you'll see that about 8% of the Kenyan population own cryptocurrencies. And this is because of cases of unemployment, inflation rates, and Kenya being the tech hub of Africa, we are sort of advantaged as opposed to other African countries in terms of technology. So the youth, when they come from universities, they don't have jobs, they don't have opportunities. They go online and they see this world of digital currencies, cryptocurrency, and the blockchain technologies. So they start trying to sort of like experiment. They want to experiment. They want to make money, etc., etc. So over the 18 months or over the past few years, there has been an increase. Yeah, because for us, it's more of a push because it's more of a need. We are getting into Bitcoin because we need it, not because it's a luxury for us, not because it's just another option out there. Most of the people get into BTC or get into the crypto space. And I'll say the crypto space because not every person who participates in this space is actually a Bitcoiner. So with communities like Bitcoin, at least we try to bring people out of the shit casino and to focus on Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm saying that because when I started off, I did not have a mentor. Sadly, I did not have a mentor, and I went down that shit casino. I went down the shit rabbit hole, and I invested in things that got me, in like I made bad financial decisions. But however, I do not regret because finally I'm here. I have learned, and I'm being a mentor to others. So it's a good thing that it happened that way.
How would you say, because here in the States, we have major gambling problems. People love their lottery tickets and sports betting, and the whole altcoin space has been very popular. And most people know my views of that I think that the vast majority of altcoins are scams, and the best case argument for them is that some of them are high risk tech securities that eventually become obsolete anyway, like everything else against Bitcoin. So what is the view of altcoins there? You mentioned it a little bit already, that there's the Bitcoin community you have there, and then there's some other people that do other things. Like, are they drawn to the get rich quick kind of things, or are they drawn to the innovative kinds of things, or are we talking mostly like stable coins? What are the, besides Bitcoin, what are the things they're drawn to, and how does that fit into your education? Do you talk about that in a positive or negative light at all?
Okay, so I would say they're drawn to altcoins in a way that they just want to make money, not necessarily being rich immediately. But like I mentioned earlier on, we have a lot of unemployment with the youth. So when they hear about when they learn about altcoins, they're like, okay, so can I make money out of this? Even my own students, when they choose to learn about Bitcoin, it's about, so after learning, will I be able to make money, right? And we also have some who actually go there because of innovations that are happening, right? But the majority, I can say it's because they want to make something out of it. It's because they want to make money out of it. And some, sadly or unfortunately, is they heard that they could become millionaires overnight. So they think when they buy these altcoins, that will happen to them. They read these stories online about 21-year-olds buying Lamborghinis, etc., etc., and they're like, maybe if I try my hand in it, I will be the next, So there's also that misinformation that's going on, that if you buy this shitcoin, you'll be in the next 2 months, 3 months, you'll become a billionaire, etc., etc. And then also there's also that misinformation. With altcoins comes it's wrapped around a lot of good things, hype. There's a lot of hype in them. When you invest in this, you'll probably make some good money out of it. The innovation around it, it's also decentralized, which is a lie. There's all these lies and misinformation around altcoins.
I'd like to take a brief moment and talk about the Bitcoin social layer, because today's sponsor of this podcast is the Orange Pill app. And the Orange Pill app is advancing and building that Bitcoin social layer as I speak here. In fact, I'm on the Orange Pill app. I joined it a couple months ago, and there are other Bitcoiners and plebs on there too. People like Safety and a Moose, Natalie Brunell, Nate Savenholm, Daniel Prince, BTC Sessions, and other Bitcoiners and plebs are on there too and joining all the time. And so the social layer is really important because while online connections are essential and they're needed and a critical piece of bringing Bitcoin mass adoption, in real life connections are only going to become more and more important into the future and a larger catalyst for being Bitcoin's circular economy and for Bitcoin's adoption. And so with the Orange Pill app, you can find Bitcoiners near you so that you can make those in-person Bitcoin connections and those Bitcoin friends. And one of the cool features is that you don't just find people near you, but also you can find Bitcoiners when you travel somewhere. So like recently, for example, I went to Boston and now I'm going to Miami here soon. And I'm glad to say that I've met Bitcoiners through the Orange Pill app directly and also indirectly through people I met through the Orange Pill app. So it's been something that's been useful to me personally. And so if you're going to be on the road too, you might be able to find Bitcoiners from where you're headed even before you get there. So, and additionally, Orange Pill app not only gives you people to meet, but it's also the world's largest repository for Bitcoin-only events. So you might be able to find cool places to hang out and not just Bitcoiners alone. So we all know that social networks and network effects have value. And so everyone that is joining the Orange Pill app makes it only stronger and stronger into the future. So I would consider joining the Orange Pill app today and get one step closer to mass adoption and expanding your Bitcoin network. So Orange Pill app is available on Android, iOS. For your consideration, appreciate your time. Let's get back to the show.
I'm curious. One of the things I really want to ask you, I know you're not in Nigeria, and I know that you said you're personally not aware of much more of what's going on in Nigeria. For those that don't know, Nigeria is having their currency upgrade to a CBDC, and basically Bitcoin's becoming extremely high demand in Nigeria. It's been fascinating to watch how in the West and Europe and the United States, online interest has gone down in Bitcoin, and yet in Nigeria, it's like skyrocketing in the same time period. And I'm curious, since that, Kenya is much closer to Nigeria than here in the U.S., both in geographically and circumstance. So, do you with the women you work with, do you see that reality of CBDCs and Nigeria's crisis being discussed at all, or I'm sure many people are aware of it? Does that come into the factor now that this is a new developing real-time story, or is that still off on the horizon?
Okay, so Africa has like 54 countries, right?
Yes.
So very different, backgrounds different, history different, and all that. But still, we have our common ground. So one thing I can say about Nigeria and the crisis around CBDCs is because Nigeria is a cash-based society as opposed to Kenya. Kenya, we had this discussion with some of my students. We were talking about CBDCs and if it will be easier for our government to implement it as opposed to Nigeria with whatever is happening in Nigeria, which is unfortunate and it's sad, them being not able to withdraw cash, make transactions and all that is quite unfortunate. But when it comes to Kenya, what we were predicting or seeing is that we have a system called M-Pesa, which has made majority of the population be cashless, right? Like, for example, I can give an example of myself. I rarely have cash on me because M-Pesa is a platform where you can send and receive money and be able to transact without having the cash itself. So, and this has enabled even people from the rural areas understand that you can transact without the physical cash. So we were discussing with my students and we were saying like, it might be a bit easier. As much as we might not want it, it might be a bit easier for our government to actually implement CBDCs as opposed to Nigeria, because Nigeria is or was a cash-based society. So people knew and understood cash. So here you're coming in telling them that you can actually transact with cash, without cash. something they don't understand. They trust something that they see as opposed to Kenya, right? So Kenya, being that most of us or most individuals, not only in Africa, but everywhere worldwide, people trust the government. So when they come in and say like, okay, this is just the same as M-Pesa, so you can use it as M-Pesa, people will be like, okay, fine, it's the government, they said it's well and good. But I'm not saying that is what is going to happen, but I'm just looking at whatever that we have, whatever tools that we've been using, and comparing it to Nigeria. Probably it might be easier for our government to implement CBDCs. And like, I think was it January, they actually decided to soften the stance on cryptocurrencies. And for me, like, people got excited, but for me, I was like, I'm a bit paranoid. So I was like, this is a way to introduce CBDCs to you, because they'll come and say, okay, fine, cryptocurrencies. So this works exactly as CBDCs. I mean, they work, so CBDCs work exactly as cryptocurrencies. So for me, it wasn't like that, really softening the stance and considering like adopting Bitcoin. For me, it was like they want to introduce CBDCs to Kenya, and this is just a way of preparing people's mind,
Yeah, I
so
know.
sort of meeting.
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, it's the same thing here where, probably pretty soon government's gonna be like, oh, we're not gonna ban Bitcoin or cryptos anymore because we're having our own and buy our token.
Exactly.
And I think ironic, at least here in the West, in the United States, I think that will help people understand the value of Bitcoin because, basically right now people's main concern is, oh, Bitcoin's not backed by anything. And when the government issues their own CBDC, they'll realize, wait, what's backing this? Because I think they'll ask the same question. And then it really, for me, in my experience, it's not until people begin asking that question that they realize, oh, one of these is backed by faith and credit, and the other one's backed by electric output and watts and energy and a brute force physical cost, and that those are very different things. So that's interesting. But I didn't know that, what you were saying about how Kenya is much more already on the digital route than say Nigeria. That makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, that's a little concerning that the friction cost is much lower for the government to transition. So so what?
But I might say, being that CBDCs, we will not have like our own privacy. So for us as educators, might be like something to like push people, or maybe have more people adopt Bitcoin, because now they'll understand with CBDCs, every transaction they do, the government will be able to see it, and probably even censor some transactions. So okay, so there's also the advantageous side of it, and especially for us who are championing Bitcoin adoption. So when you talk to people about this and you tell them, okay, CBDC is by the government, but look at it, every transaction that you will be doing will be overseen by the government or by these authorities. So look at, you have the option of Bitcoin, completely decentralized, transparent, So I think it's also somehow it might be an advantage towards us who are championing for Bitcoin adoption. But should they decide to censor, because that is something I was also thinking about, will they allow for us to buy Bitcoin using the CBDCs? That is something that has been bugging me, because they can decide.
Well, probably not, right? They'll probably cut off transition, and basically everyone that hasn't already transitioned at that point will have to, instead of exchanging political currency, the CBDCs for Bitcoin, will probably have to instead exchange goods and services, right? I mean, at least to me, that's what it seems like here in the States, what it'll look like, that the US government will just cut off access to your, currency or CBDCs, and instead you'll just have to exchange what you have physically for Bitcoin. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, one thing that comes to mind, you were mentioning how this is a concern of yours. One thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if you would like to speak on this or not at all, but one thing that comes to mind is the Rwandan genocide, because I know that Rwanda is not, obviously it's a very different very different time since then, very different country, and obviously Rwanda's changed a lot, and so obviously there's a big difference there. But I mean, it's for us here in the States, for us, conflict is overseas. It's always far away. But for you and your peers in Kenya, the Rwanda genocide was not that far away, and yes, it was a while ago, but not horribly long ago. And one of my terrifying thought experiments is, what if something, say a similar event were to happen anywhere in the world, where there are two different ethnicities or people groups, and the one that gains control, the one that gains power, basically wants to cut off the CBDC for everyone that doesn't fit within their little box of preferred people, whether ethnicity, religion, whatever, it doesn't matter. Do events like that compared to the United States, that perhaps much be more in the recent memory of people there, does that come to mind when people think of censorship and CBDCs at all, perhaps?
Censorship and CBDCs. Okay, so the CBDCs is quite a very new topic, and I would say most people are ignorant about it, because I've spoken to a lot of people, and they're like, "What is that?" So, but when you talk about such events and probably cryptocurrencies, and I'm using cryptocurrencies because not everybody is in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Or Bitcoin, they tend to think about like donations. Like for example, Bitcoin offers a platform or a chance where people can actually accept or receive donations from outside, be it from the West or different countries. So that is something they normally talk about and actually think about. And I would give an example with Nigeria, which was if I'm not wrong, 2021. There was a group, the feminist coalition, if I'm not wrong. They were protesting against the SARS in Nigeria, right? And they were receiving donations from around the world. And the government came in and shut down their accounts. So the good thing is that we had Bitcoin, or they had Bitcoin, and people started donating to them in BTC, which was a lifesaver. So when you talk about wars or post-election violence, then things like Bitcoin comes into mind. They're like, okay, fine, this is one of the advantages that we can actually use Bitcoin for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Gladstein, but I think he talked about that when it was occurring. And yeah, there were definitely, especially with the Ukraine crisis in the last year, been a lot of refugees and people that have been able to navigate around banking limitations when they need that. So yeah, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but one question I have being that what's something either positive and hopeful, or pessimistic and a concern, what's something that you think us in our American and European bubbles, what's something you think we should be aware of when it comes to Kenya and what they're exploring and learning about and developing in the Bitcoin space, or when it comes to money or whatnot? Like, for example, I know very little about your financial institution. Obviously your financial institutions, but I don't know what your inflation rate is off the top of my head. What's something that you think we should know that we may not know?
Okay, so I'll speak in general, like Africa, but like I said, yeah, we have a lot of countries in Africa, but we also have common issues. One being that when the West face inflation, we face it like 3 times worse, right? So currently according to the records, which might not be true, we have an inflation rate of 9.2%. And these are just things that are written online. But when you look at the effects, you're like, is it really 9.2%? Because the cost of living has really skyrocketed within the last, I would say, 1.5 years. It's not the same. Like, I'll give an example. Initially, you'd go to the supermarket with around $10 and you do like good shopping. Right now, $10, I mean, you can only get probably breakfast and lunch for that. And many Kenyans, and many Kenyans cannot afford that. And it has forced a lot of people. It's quite unfortunate because families are moving back to their village. Families have been forced to live with basics, just the basic needs, kids have been, or yeah, children have been dropping out of schools because their parents cannot afford school fees anymore, right? Businesses are closing down because the cost of production, cost of services have gone up. People have been let off work. There's the rise of unemployment has just gone up. So there's a lot of things that are going on in Africa with whatever there, I might call it recession, with whatever is happening in the world. So we actually face it harder. The other thing I would say is that we look at Bitcoin from a different view as opposed to how the West, we don't have that financial privilege that most Westerners have, we use mainly Bitcoin for daily use cases as opposed to the West. They can definitely just buy Bitcoin and just invest, hodl for long periods of time as opposed to us. I would want to buy something in Nigeria. My first inclination would be to use Bitcoin as opposed to like depositing money in my bank account or going to the Western Union and going through all that and the expenses that come with it, So that is something at least the West should understand, that Bitcoin for us is not an investment tool. It can be, right? It can be, definitely. But how many Africans can afford buying one BTC and just sitting on it for like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Not many. We have challenges that require immediate action. And Bitcoin is like a saving tool for us. It's hope for us. It enables cross-border payments, remittances, enable e-commerce where once it was not possible. I give an example of one of my students. She sells supplements. She's a nutritionist, so she gets her products from different places, different countries. And she was telling me before she joined my class, she had a client from Ghana. And this client wanted to pay her in Bitcoin because it was cheaper for her and it was fast, right? Because she didn't want to go to the Western Union and do all that shit. So because my student didn't understand what Bitcoin is and didn't even know how to operate Binance, because that was the thing her client was using, Binance. So she did not get that particular business because she didn't have this information. So now that she has that information, her business is open to different people, right? Different clients from all over the world. So we have different use cases as opposed to how the West see Bitcoin.
Yeah, very interesting. Different needs, different use cases. It sounds like Bitcoin is a much larger need, much more of a need than a want for you guys than it is here in the West. And that right now the use is much more day-to-day and transactional versus here in the West. People never use it day-to-day and they only use it for savings. Yeah, I will find it very fascinating over the next 5 to 10 years to see how in both regions, both the want versus need balance, as well as the short-term, immediate, and long-term use cases both evolve and how they interact with each other. So anyway, well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining. I think that's really awesome what you were doing. I hope many people learn from you, and I hope that this brings a little more attention to what you're doing and the people you're helping in your part of the world. So thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Luke. And I'm sorry about the internet connection.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing that we even have the opportunity to be able to speak instantly like this in real time over the internet. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to make it work. Thanks.